here. Am I recording? I don't remember if I think I am recording. I stopped, I started. Okay, great. Classic. So hello everyone. Thanks for joining us. Joining me and everyone else who's here. I'm Carolina, Carol for short. One of the principal teachers at the Astro Butterfly School, and I will be running the webinar for us today. I see we've got people from all over the place, so very excited. So this is a webinar about Pluto and its transition from Capricorn to Aquarius. Many of you know me already from other classes that you've taken with Astro Butterfly, and I'm sure I'm new to many of others of you. So the point of this call, really, it's an opportunity to discuss and reflect on Pluto's journey through Capricorn, which we're now coming to an end of, and to look forward into what the next couple of decades might bring as it travels through Aquarius. We're doing this webinar as an invitation to join a deeper exploration of Pluto's transition in our upcoming course called Pluto and Aquarius, A New Era, A New You. That's a 3-week course that we're going to be teaching that starts on Tuesday. So we'll talk about that also in this webinar. Okay, so here, just to get us started, there's a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. First, we're going to look back on Pluto's time in Capricorn and the sweeping changes it brought, both on a collective societal level, as well as, an opportunity to kind of reflect on the impact that it had on you on a more personal level. Next, I'm going to introduce you to what we call Pluto's cycle of change. This is a way to think about the transformative process Pluto takes us through. After that, we'll move into a discussion, reflection, where some of you will have the chance to share your personal experiences with Pluto and Capricorn. And then we'll move into exploring Pluto's shift into Aquarius, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. And we'll touch on some of the themes we can expect in this new era. And then finally, I'll share details about the 3-week course that's starting on Tuesday, which is designed really for those of you who want to dive deeper into this topic. So this is kind of like a small little glimpse of what we cover in much greater detail in the 3-week course. And I'll wrap up with a Q&A so to address any questions that you might have about the material or the course that's coming up. Okay, it's an hour-long webinar. Well, we'll see. We've got up to an hour for it. We'll see how it might be shorter, might be longer. We'll see how long it goes. But we've got an hour allotted for it. Okay, so let's start with the retrospective. Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008. Okay, so here you can kind of see how Pluto was moving that year. At the start there, it was in Sagittarius, but it moved into Capricorn. Then it moved out back into Sagittarius and then back into Capricorn, and at the end of November. And then since kind of end of November 2008, it's been in Capricorn for the whole entirety of that time. So we've had about 16 years of Pluto in Capricorn. And this is quite typical. Pluto has a quite elliptical orbit, so it spends more time in some signs than others, but on average, it spends somewhere around 20 years in each sign. And it was about 16 years in Capricorn. So to understand Pluto's impact during its time in Capricorn, let's start with a closer look at what Capricorn means. Capricorn's a cardinal earth sign, meaning it's both action-oriented and practical, right, with a strong focus on kind of tangible outcomes and goals. So it's ruled by Saturn. So Capricorn energy is rooted in structure, discipline, hierarchy. It really values endurance, accountability, in this kind of slow, steady climb towards long-term goals. So it has this natural affinity because it's ruled by Saturn with authority, with tradition, with societal frameworks, right? It's the sign that governs everything from governments and corporations to systems, institutions, hierarchies that shape society. Okay, so when Pluto, the planet of transformation, entered Capricorn, it set the stage for like a big restructuring in these areas, because Pluto is fundamentally the planet of transformation. Okay, total transformation. We often say that Pluto brings death and then rebirth, right? So the end of one system so that it can leave room for the next. And then it kind of leads us to Aquarius, which has its, which kind of picks up there with trying to move things forward into different ways. So Pluto, though, is intense, right? It often uncovers like hidden issues, right? Forcing necessary change. It digs deep, it kind of exposes what's unsustainable and then pushes us to face realities that we might have been avoiding. That's just the way Pluto tends to function, because it's a power, right, so it has that intense quality, right? There we go, uncovers what's hidden. It's a planet that's about power, fundamentally, power and control. It's not shouty, visible power. It's more like underlying power and control. So its sign placement, when it was in Capricorn, is going to show how the themes associated with that sign have power over us, or how we use those themes or qualities to control. Okay, so in Capricorn, Pluto brought its transformative power to Capricorn themes, right? Structures, hierarchies, the systems that govern our lives, right? And that created a climate for, major change on a societal level. So what did Pluto and Capricorn bring for us on a societal scale? So when Pluto first enters a new sign, that's always going to come with something of a bang. Okay. So in 2008, like you said, it marched in to Capricorn, then it backed out, then it came back in once again. And that really marked Capricorn's ingress into Capricorn. And it came in 2008, as many of you will remember, it came with a global financial crisis, right? Which would turn into a global recession. There we go. So it's interesting, actually, because this 2008 global economic meltdown was triggered by the collapse of the US housing market, and a series of high-risk mortgage-backed securities. I don't know how much you guys remember about this period, but the collapse of that housing market had actually happened in 2007, the year before Pluto entered Capricorn. So Pluto was actually in the last degrees of Sagittarius then. And in many ways, we can kind of think of that collapse as a function of the shadow side of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is like this really optimistic sign that is all about growth, growth, growth. So we can think about how, the housing collapse was really a function of excessive risk taking, or, fueled by this belief that housing prices were going to continue to rise indefinitely. And then Pluto shifted into Capricorn, right? The sign ruled by Saturn, which is the planet of reality checks and accountability. And, bam, we came face to face with the massive vulnerabilities in the financial sector. And, all of this corruption and over leveraging by major financial institutions was revealed. So I always think of that as like kind of the first really significant Pluto and Capricorn theme and issue that came with us. Okay. So the 2008 financial crisis, it led to fundamental changes in financial regulations and banking practices that were meant to prevent a repeat of the collapse. How effective that's been, who knows, but that's been part of the kind of transformative effect of Pluto in Capricorn, right? And that was just the US, right? These are planetary shifts that were, of course, are affecting the whole globe. And remember, the recession that was triggered was very much global, and it led to a lot of governments around the world implementing bailouts and social security measures to try to stabilize their economies. So this was something that was felt on a global level. I tend to use a lot of examples from the US just because I'm more familiar with the ins and outs there, but these are themes that we should have seen and that we did see on a global level. Actually, I think 2008 was also when Iceland's entire banking system collapsed as well. I think that's very same year, which was quite interesting. Again, kind of carrying that Capricorn theme. So yeah, economic restructure. We can see how Capricorn's themes of responsibility, security, material resources, Capricorn's an earth sign, right? They were all really forefront here, as well as its focus on kind of institutions as a central player. So it's all the Capricorn
Maybe it's
side
in is it in like one of the
what else? Challenges to existing political hierarchies. So 2008 also came with the election of Barack Obama in the US, who was the first Black president in the nation's history, which really marked a major milestone in the country's history of racial inequality. But globally, over the course of Pluto's time in Capricorn, we saw a number of other challenges to existing political hierarchies. There was the Arab Spring, remember, a couple of years into Pluto's transit into Capricorn. There was UK's Brexit out of the European Union. There was there was kind of like major rise of populism across a number of European countries, Italy, Hungary, Poland. There were like really widespread protests. I remember in Brazil as well that were like demanding accountability and transparency from political leaders. So yeah, this focus on political hierarchies and political institutions is something that came up a lot throughout Pluto's transit through Capricorn. So again, really showing both the Capricorn focus on institutions and governments are about as Capricornian as you get, but then Pluto's kind of its effect of trying to reveal what's hidden. That's one of the main forces that Pluto does. It makes us change our awareness of something and reveal underlying things. Power imbalances. So lots of other social movements looking to expose ingrained structural power imbalances also emerged, like the Me Too movement in the US or the Black Lives Matter movement in the US as well. I also added WikiLeaks here. WikiLeaks gained a lot of attention around 2010 when it released this massive collection of classified US military and diplomatic documents, which, exposed government activities and decisions that had previously been kept from view, right? So here again, we're seeing how Pluto was exposing the inner workings of hierarchies and institutions, revealing how power was wielded or manipulated or misused within government and corporate structures as well. And then just, and societal structures. Okay, let's see what's similarly, yeah, exposing kind of corrupted networks. So again, here we see the secrecy breaking energy of Pluto focusing on systems and networks. We had the Jeffrey Epstein scandal in 2019, who was, this, rich, very rich guy, worked in the finance industry sector, who was arrested in 2019 on charges of, what was it, sex trafficking minors, I think. Yeah. I don't know. Sorry, guys. Try not to send me too many requests because there's so many of you on here that every time someone sends a request for something, it pops up on my screen. So I'm just going to close things there. So again, so Epstein, P. Diddy, now we're seeing another another man who thought he was beyond accountability because of his wealth and hierarchy, Sean Diddy Combs, coming to accountability. I also put in the FIFA corruption scandal here. That one sticks in my mind as well, which it revealed like this intricate web of bribery and like racketeering and money laundering within the organization, with amongst like high-ranking officials who manipulated the World Cup hosting rights and marketing deals for personal gain. So again, these kind of like revelatory quality of ingrained institutions and power dynamics. It's the kind of uniting theme. And then, yeah, structural shifts and crises, right? With events like COVID-19, right? We saw societal structures pushed to their limits, right? And the pandemic disrupted every area governed by Capricorn, right? Public health systems, governments, economies. So again, very structural, very Capricorn there. And of course, I mean, those of you who follow astrology know that that was Saturn also coming in to join the Pluto and Capricorn party. So the effect of that transit. Are you guys having trouble hearing me? No, okay, great. Let's see. We can think of like a number of other themes that came to the fore over this period. Personal responsibility and security, right? Issues of hierarchy and competitiveness, pressures to perform. So I think, these are all kind of Capricorn themes, and you can go back and we can kind of think about different scandals or issues or, debates that were going on in the public sphere around these topics. And now those are themes that we saw emerge on the collective level, but Pluto's transit through Capricorn also impacted each of us on a much more personal level, of course, right? So throughout its 16-year tenure in Capricorn, we're all brought face to face with our own relationships with authority, responsibility, hierarchy, institutions, and, well, power, right? So to help you reflect on its impact on you, these are some of the things we would think about. Which house did Pluto transit in your chart? Right. So some of you are much more familiar with natal astrology than others of you. So these are the parts of this kind of like the types of analysis that you would do. So for example, if it moved through your fourth house in your natal chart, how did it bring transformations into your home life? It certainly did. And again, these are slow 16-year transitions, right? And those transitions are generally punctuated by planetary transits, right? So for example, if that Pluto conjuncted your sun, maybe you have a Capricorn sun like me, that means that at some point Pluto went over your sun. That would have been a major, shorter, maybe 2-year period of major transformation. Maybe it squared your moon, so made a hard aspect to another one of your natal planets. So these planetary aspects are the periods over the 16-year period where you really had much more striking change. These analyses are the kind of thing that we'll do in much more detail in the course, that we kind of prompt you and help you kind of go through that kind of more detailed analysis. Other things that matter, your Pluto generation, like, so what sign were you born with Pluto in, right? This is what we consider one of the big generational indicators in astrology. Are you a Pluto and Libra generation person? Are you Pluto and Scorpio if you're a millennial? If you're a boomer, you Pluto and Leo, right? Gen X, Virgo also. So that the different generations were affected differently by Pluto's aspects, right? Your own personal relationship to Pluto. So another thing that we take into consideration a lot when we reflect on how Pluto transits affect us is what's our natal relationship with Pluto. So what does Pluto do in your chart? That's how I always talk about this. Does it aspect personal planets in your natal chart? What house is it in? All of those kinds of things are going to make a difference in the way Pluto shows up in your life personally as well. Then your personal relationship with Capricorn. Very important. Not all of you have planets in Capricorn. Some of you do, but everyone has Capricorn somewhere in their chart. So there is some aspect of your life where Capricorn and Capricorn qualities reign. Okay, so you tend to approach that area of your life in a Capricorn way. And so that area of your life that you have a tendency to already approach, or that shows up in a Capricorn-like way, so in a more structured way where you're forced to think about long-term goals, that all of that is kind of your Capricorn house. That house underwent a big transformation over the course of the 16 years. But then, yeah, also kind of like whether or not how conscious you are of your Capricorn house, or how much you kind of consciously do your Capricorn. That all has a lot to do with your Capricorn placements, whether you have any, whether you don't. Yeah, and then there's just this question of how do you handle change? Do you tend to embrace it or resist it? To ask it astrologically, are you very fixed in energy? Do you have a lot of cardinal energy in your chart? Do you like to initiate change yourself? So maybe you find it really difficult when things like are forced upon you. Or maybe you're more mutable in energy and you're kind of more of a go with the flow kind of person. So all of that would have affected the way that you experience your Pluto transits. Oh, and finally, age. Yeah. This is always something to consider. It's not the same to go through a Pluto transit at age 5 or 12 than at 40 or 60. As a general rule, Pluto transit usually get better with age, somewhat easier. And I think in large part that's because we're more self-aware, hopefully, the older we get, right? We're a little bit more used to ourselves. And a major part, as we'll talk about now, about Pluto transits and the way they transform us has to do with this issue of self-awareness and awareness. So we just tend to be a little bit better at that the older we get. Okay, and so yeah, this takes us to thinking about the way Pluto tends to bring about change in our lives, right? This is what we refer to as Pluto's cycle of change. So Pluto cycle of change is a three-stage process that describes the way Pluto operates through our natal chart placements and through transits. Okay, understanding the natural sequence of this cycle will help us put things into perspective and take ownership of the change process. And now, I don't want you to think that this is always a simple linear process, right? But generally speaking, a Pluto transit is going to take us through these three stages: disempowerment, awareness, and then transformation. Okay. So first, there's tends to be strong feelings of disempowerment. That's kind of tends to mark the start of Pluto transits. Especially when I say Pluto transits, I generally mean the transits to your planets or angles, as opposed to just the general whole 16-year cycle. It's like those moments where Pluto actually made a hard aspect, especially to one of your planets or angles. That's usually the start of these strong Pluto transits that begin with this feeling of disempowerment, usually. It involves feeling kind of powerless or facing situations where our personal will is thwarted, usually in some way, often by external forces, or at least things that we feel we can't control. So these experiences can create feelings of fear, weakness, frustration, and they lead to a unconscious desire to control or manipulate situations, usually in order to feel vulnerable, to avoid feeling vulnerable again, right? So it's so this issue of disempowerment often comes with a desire to exert more control ourselves in some way. It's this thing, Pluto, very psychological planet. So it's really interesting to actually look back at Pluto transits, especially once you've had a little bit of space from them, to be able to see kind of how you rode that initial wave of disempowerment. Then we tend to move into awareness. So in this stage, we go into the underworld, the figurative underworld, and we try to understand what it is that's disempowering us, right? We reflect on we'll re-experience past disempowering moments to gain deeper self-understanding, right? So this introspective phase, it can be intense, but by confronting buried emotions, we start to find some sense of acceptance and release. And this period I find is really, it's very much about, this is usually the stage where where Pluto's psychological component really tends to come in, and this is what I was saying. It tends to get easier when we're older because we have more of that self-awareness. We can see how certain situations remind us of other situations when we were younger, or that kind of thing, right? So it's a really important part of this process of transformation. And that's it. And then the final stage, ideally, is when we reach a positive stage of transformation. So this stage is about reclaiming our power in a constructive way, aligning personal actions with the greater good, ideally, rather than selfish desires. Pluto is this planet that represents the collective will. So there's this quality of it of trying to see beyond ourselves. And the process of transformation is continuous, right? It encourages continuous growth, right? To help us hopefully get into a sense of flow and fulfillment into our own purpose.
Okay, maybe.
I just wanted to remind you guys, please, to have your mics muted. You should have gotten muted when you came in, but sometimes it doesn't work. So just if you do see that your mic is unmuted, please mute it, because sometimes you don't realize there's background noise. Okay. Now, we don't have too much time, but I did want to take a few minutes here to give you some space to reflect a little bit about how Pluto and Capricorn has impacted you. Okay, so thinking about different areas of your life that might have been affected by these transits. So the disempowerment stage generally comes with the sense that we're powerless or being overpowered in some area of our life, right? So maybe you were affected more on the identity level, or maybe it was your relationships, career, family. So those of you who are more familiar with your natal charts, you'll already kind of have a sense of what was being stomped around on by transits. Some of you don't, but you can still think about it in terms of this general long 16-year period of your life. Then the awareness stage had us think about the source of this disempowerment, right? Maybe struggles with authority figures made us aware of hierarchies or power dynamics that we hadn't been aware of in the past. Or maybe you were the authority. Like, so those of you who have like a lot of Capricorn placement, for example, or Cancer placements, a lot of times also the opposition, we come to realize where we're the authority or where we've been misusing our own power, for example. That might have been part of this awareness stage as well. Power imbalances in relationships. That's something that's very often revealed during these Pluto transits. Right, and then there's just this structural side of Capricorn, right, which made us aware of constraints from external circumstances, especially. And then finally, the transformation stage, right? Hopefully we came to recognize our own resilience, our own accountability, our self-worth, self-reliance. This is the part where it's really helpful, especially, I mean, I won't lie, Pluto transits tend to be difficult. Rarely has a person been like, "Ooh, that was a fun Pluto transit." Usually, even, I mean, I've been under about 11 years of Pluto transits nonstop, 2 planets because of the way my chart is written. And it's like I can look back now at the period and say, so glad that happened. And a big part of that is the appreciation of the transformations that it's brought. A lot of the process wasn't necessarily like super fun. Some of it was actually, some of it felt empowering at the time. Some of it didn't. But there is always this kind of like, especially once you have enough distance from it, this ability to see like, okay, this part of me was fundamentally altered. And that's the thing about Pluto, it literally does kill the old and bring the new. So it's like you feel this, there can be this sense of rebirth in some way. So yeah, take a minute or two here to think and please share some of your thoughts in the chat. I've seen that there's things coming in the chat. I haven't been able to read it, but I think it's always really interesting that those of you who are comfortable sharing to let others hear what your experiences have been. I myself I'll share much more in the course when we do in more detail. But for me, it brought a massive change in career and general identity because again, I have a Capricorn sun. Along with a few other placements. So does anyone want to share any thoughts or any personal experiences with this transit? Kelly.
Hi there. Yeah, so it's my second house, and I ended up, well, I got a PhD, I got married, and then I got divorced, and then I was told I was going to die. I had open heart surgery, barely survived it, got divorced then, and then bought the house, moved on with my life, and my dad died. But now everything is like finally stable. And then enters my my Aquarius with my sun and moon there. So that'll be fun.
Oh.
But it's good though. You're right. It's at the point now where it's like, what the hell happened these past 16 years? And now it's just like, I'm actually feel positive for some reason about Aquarius.
Yeah. No, and that's it. And in 16 years, I mean, who hasn't gone through changes in any 16-year period, right? We all will have gone through changes, right? Yours definitely sound quite dramatic. And I imagine that it would have to do also with the planets that were aspected and transited during that transit. Even if you don't have anything in Capricorn, for example, if you had planets in Cancer, if you have planets in Aries, and Libra. Yeah. These are the ones that would have been squared or hit by Pluto in hard aspect, right? And often we'll see how those significations come up. And again, this is the kind of thing that we go through in much more detail. But thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Interestingly, it actually kept going. Like at the very end there, it was when all the really bad stuff happened. It was going back and forth over like squaring my natal Pluto.
It was your Pluto square.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was going back and forth in 2019 and stuff like that. And that's when all like the 18 and 19, that's when all the crazy stuff happened.
Yeah. I also got divorced by Pluto square. Yeah. So those of you who have Pluto in Libra, you will have experienced your Pluto square. So Pluto transiting Pluto squaring your natal Pluto sometime over the course of these 16 years. And where we have our natal Pluto is where we hold fears, where we have, it's kind of like this place of kind of anxiety, also control, where we have our controlling tendencies and all that. And so your Pluto square comes and boom, revelations. You come to see how you do control things or don't control things so effectively. Thank you. Esther.
Yes, hello. I first noticed when I looked at my transit charts, Pluto was at first my 8th house, so I was intense straight away, and I'm 29 by the way, so pretty young. And then around 2012, it hit my ninth house. And it makes sense that I struggled in college a lot. I had to fight for my place. I really had to fight, prove myself constantly. It was even conjuncting my Neptune and later on Uranus, who were also there in the signs of Capricorn.
Ah,
So,
yeah.
so it's like makes loads of sense. I just remember having to constantly fight for my education, literally.
Yeah. Yeah, great. No, exactly. Exactly. That initial sense is there's something about Pluto trends that have this, well, like we were saying about the cycle of change, right? That usually there is the sense of powerlessness, like I said, that accompanies it, the sense of like, oh my God, I'm being overwhelmed by something. But ultimately it will teach us where we are empowered as well, right? How we can wield our own power and control as well. That's part of the awareness stage usually, and then into the transformation. Thank you, Esther. We have time for one more, Robin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I have to tell you, it's been one crazy ride. So I have Sagittarius rising, so second house. And then my Pluto is in Libra, but then in my 10th house. And it has just been a wild ride. And right now, just really feeling that, final degree of Pluto and Capricorn. And financially, like it's just been absolutely next level challenging. So I'm very much looking forward to moving on. But just kind of like reading, things that you've written about, and others, and just trying to like make sense of it, because right now how it's affecting my finances, I have like zero control over it at all, because the person that's managing the finances of our company has completely mismanaged them, and then that's affect. So it's just like I sit back and I'm just kind of like, okay, how much worse does it need
Yeah,
to
these
get?
revelations,
Yeah,
right?
yes,
Of abuse of power. I mean,
yes.
again, a very kind of common Pluto and Capricorn theme, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I'm feeling it probably more than I'd like to. And I'm just trying to figure out like when the transformation happens, or like that revelation happens. Do you know what I mean? Where we can like move past this period of time, because it's affecting both myself and my husband. But yeah, it has been quite the journey, to say the least.
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, and you brought up the really good point that, right now Pluto's been at 29 degrees and change, right? And we're literally in the last 10 days of Pluto in Capricorn. So especially those of us who have 29-degree planets, will particularly have been feeling this. But for all of us, this is kind of this period of reflection. Actually, this is, why we've timed the course in this way, because it'll be starting, the first week of the course will be the last degree of Capricorn. And that's kind of when we're doing this retrospective. And it's a really good time to come and look back, right? And start trying to get a little bit of the perspective and hopefully some appreciation of the growth and transformation that all of these, often difficult transits have brought you.
Yes, yes.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Robin. Theodora, I do need to move on. So unless it was a question that was connected.
Oh, no problem. Sorry. It's okay. I was going to share a little bit, but go ahead. You can.
Thank you. Maybe if we have a little bit of time at the end, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no
Just,
problem. Thanks.
thank you. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, I just wanted to get into Pluto and Aquarius, but we will probably have time in the Q&A also to discuss a little bit more. I just want to make sure that I get through everything before people have to go. Because hey, I think everyone's quite excited about Pluto and Aquarius. And it's, Pluto and Aquarius has been, we've kind of bounced in and out of it a few times. So it entered Pluto in Capricorn by going in, bumping out, and then going in again. Pluto and Aquarius's ingress has been a bit more drawn out. It went in March of 23, so a year and a half ago. Then it went out in that summer. Then it came back in at the start of this year in January 2024. So that was Pluto at re-entering Aquarius. Then it bumped out again. And then now on I think it's the 19th, Pluto is going to enter into Aquarius again for the final time. So this time we're really coming in for the, full ingress. Yeah, this isn't just a once in a lifetime transit. It's a once in 250 years event. Okay. Pluto takes a quarter of a millennium to travel through the entire zodiac. Okay. So each ingress into a new sign is a really powerful turning point, right? And so Pluto in Aquarius is going to reshape society on both a collective and then, of course, individual level, depending on how your chart is written. So it's going to be in Aquarius for 20 years, a little bit longer than it was in Capricorn. And just like Pluto and Capricorn broke down and restructured our understanding of institutions, power, and authority, Pluto and Aquarius is going to shift our focus towards innovation, decentralization, ideologies. These are all Aquarius themes. Pluto's ingress into Aquarius continues the Aquarius energetic shift that happened in December 2020 when Jupiter and Saturn met at 0 degrees Aquarius, starting a new 200-year air chapter. So this is kind of a little bit more technical astrology, but there was this very big conjunction that those of you who follow astrology were probably quite aware of it at the end of 2020, which was that 0 degree Aquarius conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn. And now kind of Pluto's movement into Aquarius is, pushing us much, much deeper forward. It's really going to make us aware of these Aquarian themes on a different level. And again, remember, Pluto has this this quality where it shows things that are hidden, right? So we're going to understand the full complexity of the sign, the power of the sign, the intensity of the sign, and the complexity of the sign, and the shadow sides of the sign. Aquarius, it's a sign about progressive ideas, technology, innovation, and the decentralization of power. It's the fixed air sign in astrology. So air signs are idea-driven signs, and they're social signs. They're about interaction. It's a sign that's focused on shaping society and the collective in accordance with specific ideals. Okay, it's a principled sign, but it has this futuristic orientation. That's why I wrote progressive ideas. By progressive, I don't mean left-leaning on the political spectrum. I just mean future-focused, right? So ideas that are meant to move society forward in some way. And this is honestly, I feel a common misconception of Aquarius. I feel like it's too often painted as this super humanitarian sign that all it cares about this collective good. You can have Aquarian ideals that are regressive as well. I mean, like that in terms of a political realm, or that you might disagree with, right? So that's key. That's a key thing to remember before we start to romanticize Aquarius too much. But because of this kind of future orientation, regardless, it's a sign that wants to kind of move society forward or move things forward in accordance to an ideal of where things should go. And because of that, we associate it a lot with technology and innovation, right? Aquarius, it's looking to revolutionize society in some way, to break us free of old structures or traditional structures, to make room for the new in some way. And it wants to decentralize power. Okay, to shift authority from traditional hierarchies in general to the people, at least to the right people, defined by whoever's talking. So the idea, though, is empowerment of individuals as opposed to empowerment of institutions or structures. You can see why it follows Capricorn. So yes, Pluto in Capricorn brought us centralization of the population in big cities and urban areas. With Pluto in Aquarius, we can expect a trend of population dispersal and communal living. Actually, I forgot to mention that in 2008, when Pluto first entered Capricorn, that actually marked a really big symbolic shift where humanity entered in what was called the urban age, because at that year, we hit this moment where more than half of the world's population was suddenly in cities. Okay, so there was this idea of centralization. Now, I don't think there's any reason to believe that urbanization is going to suddenly stop, but we would expect Pluto in Aquarius to bring some trends towards population dispersal and, like I say, communal living. maybe it'll be driven by higher urban costs, the fact that remote work is so much easier, environmental concerns, lifestyle shifts. So that's one of the themes that we might expect. If Pluto and Capricorn brought into focus corruption and power inequalities in existing institutions, which has led to growing distrust in government institutions, Pluto and Aquarius could reveal growing distrust in traditional institutions as people seek alternatives, right, through decentralized networks. So while this can empower communities, it could also lead to destabilizing loss of faith in governance, law, established systems, right, which could create potential for societal fragmentation, challenges in leadership. So these are kind of certain ideas of things that we might see on a more collective level. Pluto and Aquarius is likely to bring developments in alternative institutional arrangements, as well as revelations about the challenges with decentralization, right? So we have to remember that Pluto in any sign will always reveal the shadow of that sign. So like I was saying, Capricorn brought accountability to Sagittarius as over-optimism, for example, but also brought so many revelations related to institutionalized power, right? It's not like all of a sudden we just got all the good of institutionalization just because Pluto went into Capricorn, right? And so with Aquarius, same thing, right? While decentralization we'll probably see much more of it and will be seen as a solution. And I'm sure in many ways it will help to empower communities in some ways. We would also expect Pluto to expose issues with fragmented or leaderless movements, for example, where like maybe collective action is hindered by a lack of cohesion or direction or something like that. So again, my old career was a sociologist, I should say. So this is the way that I tend to think a lot about society's ideas of centralization, institutions, and things like that. Pluto and Capricorn brought issues with material security, right? Because it's this earth sign. Pluto and Aquarius will bring issues associated with ideological righteousness or dogmatism. That's something I would expect. I can envision this manifesting maybe as a kind of groupthink, right? Because Aquarius values the collective, but Pluto may reveal how this can turn into groupthink where dissenting opinions are suppressed in favor of conformity. I can't help but remember how during, the last Pluto and Aquarius phase, the French Revolution, which was meant to dismantle things, right? It turned into the reign of terror, right? That was all Aquarius still, right? So those of you who are kind of familiar with 18th century history, maybe. But I do think that, we're already seeing it, right? Becoming more visible in online communities, maybe social movements, even in workplaces, maybe. There might be pressure to align with dominant ideological tribes. No surprise here, right? The Aquarian folk, Pluto and Aquarius will reveal the shadow side of community where, ironically, people feel more isolated despite being more connected online. This to me is kind of very classic Aquarius. I often say about Aquarians, for example, they love society in theory, but don't tend to like people that much. And I think that we'll see this on a collective level in some way with Pluto and Aquarius. What about artificial intelligence influences in the next 20 years? Yeah, exactly. Right? Pluto and Aquarius will accelerate advancements in AI, pushing us to explore new boundaries in human-machine collaboration. I think this is absolutely, we already saw this theme. I mean, when Pluto first ingressed Aquarius in 23, that's when ChatGPT kind of became suddenly accessible to everyone. We can already see how much it's grown in just since that first ingress. So it's really marking a shift in how we interact with technology and access information. And this is just the beginning, ChatGPT, where again, Pluto and Aquarius, it's going to really accelerate advancements in AI, maybe exploring different boundaries, right, of human-machine collaboration, right? And again, whatever shadows come with that too, right? Like these are themes that are going to be up, right? We'll be rethinking our relationship with technology, for example. And of course, I use ChatGPT to create this image because it wouldn't be right otherwise. Mind you, the good news about Pluto's transit in Aquarius is that in the next 2 decades, Pluto makes predominantly supportive aspects with other planets, with other outer planets. so, in contrast, Pluto and Capricorn had challenging aspects, right? We went through the Pluto-Uranus square. We had the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, of course. So, especially like at the start, so from 2026 to 2028, Pluto and Aquarius, it's gonna team up with Uranus and Gemini and Neptune and Aries, making this what we call a minor triangle in astrology. This is considered a very positive or smooth flowing aspect pattern anyway. Again, positive, negative. Whenever we're talking about collective influences, it's very hard to know the impact that it's going to have on us. But what we know is that the energies of these three outer planets are going to be flowing smoothly and supportively. So I think we should expect really exciting breakthroughs in how we communicate, learn, connect, right? Thanks to new technological and decentralized platforms, right? When Pluto in Aquarian's kind of progressive orientation joins with Uranus in Gemini's, fresh ideas, right? I think that we're going to see some major steps forward, and hopefully in kind of humanitarian, environmental efforts as well, right? Like, so this will span the range, not just in technology. I think someone in there pointed out that Google named their AI app Gemini. Yeah, it doesn't seem like a coincidence either. So Gemini is the sign that's all about kind of information gathering. So yeah, but regardless, I think it's going to be a powerful time when personal freedom and collective growth are going to line up, right? Which is likely to bring very quick and far-reaching transformative change. I mean, I think that's really going to be a defining feature of these, especially these first years with these smooth aspects happening. Just the pace of change that we can expect is going to be fast. And that's another thing. I mean, air signs tend to be faster than earth signs. This is just kind of another quality of the signs differences. So I think it's an exciting time. So yeah, someone asked in here also, how will it affect us individually, right? Again, can't necessarily, this is exactly the kind of thing that you need to analyze in detail, or that we can get hints by looking at our natal chart and doing that kind of analysis. So that's one of the real central focuses that we're going to have of the Pluto course. Okay, and that brings us to the Pluto and Aquarius course. So the Pluto course is broken up into 3 modules. It's going to be 3 weeks. So like I was saying, that first module coincides with Pluto's last degrees in Capricorn, the time period where it's last degrees in Capricorn. November 19th, which is when Pluto enters Aquarius, that's when we start our second module. And then the third week will be an analysis of Pluto and Aquarius, what to expect. And there you also will help you kind of go through the analysis of your own charts and to see kind of how this shift might be affecting you going forward. So in module 1, we'll wrap up the 16-year Pluto and Capricorn transit. So there'll be transit analyses, looking back, kind of more detail of, basically, I just did it. I went over some of the societal themes. A big emphasis of the module 1 is for you to do your own more careful analysis on your own chart. Module 2, experience Pluto's ingress in Aquarius in real time. So also part of the course, I mean, in our courses, there's always this online lessons that you access. There's always a kind of assignments that we give you to help prompt you, to help you do your own work and analysis. And then we have calls every week with me where we're going to have kind of more experiential calls. And in the module 2 one, we'll be doing an experiential call to try to help us feel into the ingress into Aquarius. And then module 3 is what to expect, Pluto's transit in Aquarius. Right. So every week we'll have a webinar that's more introductory and experiential. And then we'll have a second webinar every week that's a Q&A call. And those are really open to just general questions about the material, how to go through, because we have found that a big issue with a lot of astrology courses is people read the material and then they have questions they feel like they can never be answered. So that's definitely something that we like doing in our courses. There's video lessons that get released each week. So for each module you'll have, and they're usually like 10-minute, there's like multiple 10-minute videos. I always make one that's a little bit longer. And then, so you watch those in your own time, has transcripts as well. There's reflection exercises. And then in those webinar calls, we'll do breakout groups usually. So for those of you who like to, who learn better through sharing, right? So the idea usually is that we like to provide things for all types of learning modalities. Okay, and that is it. And so now questions, guys. Any questions about the course or anything else? So Mel asks, is this course conducive to astrology newbies? Yes, so we definitely try to make our courses accessible to whatever level you're in. Basically, we have advanced students always in our courses. We have beginner students always in our courses. And if you're a total newbie, there's obviously some things that go a little bit over your head, but it's still accessible. So that's kind of part of the reason of having more experiential calls around as well, having Q&As available to help you dissect things and to kind of get you thinking in terms of astrology. But there is a technical side to the course, but there is also just a more general experiential side of the course, and the video should make sense regardless of your level of astrological knowledge.
Hello.
Yes, hi. Hi, Jen.
Hello. I'm also a beginner, as I follow Astro Butterfly, the newsletter since years, and I'm very interested. I also wanted to do a course where is explained the thing between the houses and the signs and everything, but I didn't do it until now. So can I join? Because I have my natal chart printed, but then to follow where is this and this and this and this house, and you help also with this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we will definitely give you prompts to where you're asked those kinds of details, and then again in the Q&As you can ask for more specific help if you need. But yeah, that's part of the course for sure, is to sit down, and we encourage you to look at your house placement. But
how,
if you're very advanced, you're going to do much more detailed analysis of aspects and
Yes.
things like that. If you're beginner, we'll show you like, okay, start just with your house, for example. So we always kind of have, suggestions of what to do if you're just a beginner versus where you can take your analysis if you're more advanced.
But how do I know where was my Pluto 1 year ago, 2 years ago? And also you are talking about, I only have my natal chart. And do we get a software or something like where we can, how can I follow this over the years?
I understand. Yeah, no, we give you a tutorial. So there's a website that you can use. So as part of the lessons, there'll be a tutorial that'll show you, go to this website, put in your information here, and you get a list of your transits, for example.
Okay.
So we always try to, that's what I mean. We try to make it very accessible for people who have not done it before. So you'll be able to
because this was my missing link that I want to do it, but then it doesn't help when I don't know and I cannot follow really personally. So, okay.
No, of course. No, thank you for the question. I understand. Yeah. No, we definitely try to walk you through how to get those dates. And those of you who already are more advanced know how to get those. But this is what I mean by, we always have the more specific directions for people who are doing it for the first time.
And one more question. There are two dates always for different time zones for the webinars. Are they the same? One is in the morning and one in the evening, or different ones?
Yes. So we're going to have calls on Tuesdays so I'm in the UK.
I'm in Spain.
Okay, great. Okay, so you'll have no problem, because if I'm available, you're available, because we're more or less the same time. But for everybody else. So yeah, if you're in Europe, you're fine. So the Tuesday ones are at 8 in the morning my time, which is accessible more to Europeans or people or more East, I want to say. And then I do one at 8 p.m., which is the American one, which will be that would be 3 o'clock in the afternoon Central Time Eastern, or noon in Pacific time, for example. So the Tuesday call, that's the more experiential one. That one we always have these two time zones. So no matter where you are in the world, you should be able to make one or the other of those. That's the point of having the two of them, so that you're available at either time. And regardless, they're always recorded. So if you can't make it live, you can always watch the videos of the
Okay.
webinars afterwards. I realize some people work on a Tuesday, for example, and might not be able to make the classes, right? And then we have a call on Sundays, so towards the end of the module, and that one's a Q&A call. And those are scheduled for 5 p.m. UK time, which is noon on a Sunday for New Yorkers, for example, and 9 in the morning for Californians.
And 6 in the evening for Spain. That's
And
great.
6 in the evening for Europe, for the rest of Europeans. Exactly. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And again, if you can't make, so I realize like if you're in Australia, for example, you're going to be unlikely to make that call, that one, the Sunday one. You'll be able to make the Tuesday one, which is the more experiential one. But if you can't make the Q&A calls live, you can always submit your questions on the platform, and I answer them during the call or on the platform as well. We can write those things. So
Thank
no one
you.
has to go to the live classes. Thank you. Any other questions? I'm seeing a few here on. No. I don't want to get into like kind of detailed natal placements right now. It's just not quite the cost. Oh, always the question that I don't know. So if you click on the link that was in the email for this webinar, it'll take you to a page where it'll tell you the cost. I just can't remember what it is. I'm part of a team, by the way, so I don't write, I feel like I always get credit for writing the newsletters, and that's not me, that's Angelina. I'm the, who's the owner of Astro Butterfly as well. So we work as a team. So you do have to click on the link, and that'll tell you the cost.
Kara, I think someone mentioned there was 149, I believe.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, I think it's somewhere in there. And I know like if you're in Age of Aquarius, there's a rebate. So great. I cannot make either Sunday or Tuesday due to work schedule. Is there something I ought to do in preparation to compensate for that? Yeah, no, so really the idea, JJ, would be to write any questions that you do have before Sunday's call so that I can answer those, and then you can watch the video recordings. That would really be it. Just you would just want to make extra time in your week to watch the recording of the call. Will this webinar be available afterwards via recording? Yes, I believe so. I believe that if you registered, you'll be sent the recording. Oh, thank you. Oh, you guys are so helpful. I love it when people help answer my questions in the chat. So someone there has put in the link for the course.
May I ask a quick question?
Please. Hi, Julia.
Hi, how are you? I always think like of astrology, like you said, sometimes it's much easier to look back once kind of the time passed. But I'm just curious with your experience, since you had the Pluto go over your sun, like looking back, the changes or transformations, let's say, that you went through, is there anything you feel you could have, let's say, done proactively to somehow, let's say, minimize the more challenging effects of the transit? Or do you really, from your experience, feel that it's one of those things that no matter what, you're just living through and experiencing and kind of what evolves?
I get some version of this question often whenever we talk about transit, but how can I avoid the difficult? I think the reality is there is a lot of comfort that can come from knowing that a transit is happening and having the language of trying to understand that there's a deeper significance around it. But does that necessarily take the ouch away? Part of the nature of a Pluto transit is precisely to reveal certain issues, right? So that revelation has to happen. I think the best thing that you can always do is come into a Pluto transit ready and willing to change, right? So Pluto, where we have Pluto and when we're under Pluto, the immediate tendency is to want to grip, is to want to control, hold on tight. So a Pluto transit's coming, you have to start loosening your grip, accept that loss is gonna usually be a part of it, that there's gonna be transformation that's asking you. So there's an attitude that you can approach it with that makes it a little bit easier. But listen, like I said, been under a lot of Pluto transits. There's been a lot of loss in, figurative loss, especially,
Yeah.
but, and a lot of stuff that I wanted to let go of, but it's still hard. Like I moved countries, for example. I changed careers, like I wanted to do that. There's still a part of me that, misses things, right? Like, so that's just kind of part of the process, I think. So it's an attitude that you can approach it with that I think helps, but I don't know that it, and I think that can be quite helpful. But for example, I had been under 10 years of Pluto transits, and then Pluto came to my Saturn, and I was like, poof, I'm an old hat at Pluto transit. It's going to be easy.
No.
Didn't see
No,
that
it's
one
interesting.
come.
It's true because I've had like the Pluto experiences as well over other planets, and I agree because the learning seems to come through the challenge, the pain. But you're right, on some level, like I keep thinking, is there a way to make it a smoother transition? But yeah, maybe.
I think it's kind of acceptance
Attitude
is a
and
big part.
perspective, right?
Yeah. And coming in with open awareness.
Awareness. Yeah.
Humility is always helpful with any transit, but especially Pluto and Saturn transits, right? A certain dose of it.
Thank you.
Good question, though. Okay, guys. Any other questions? Yeah, first awareness and then acceptance. Yeah. And like I say, one of the big things I always say, people get really, they get into astrology, they hear about Pluto, and they're like, oh, it's coming. It's like, guys, unless you're, I'm sorry, we did have like a 29-year-old here, but like, unless you're 15, you've been through Pluto transits before, okay? And you've lived through them. So I think that there's also quite a bit of comfort that can come from looking back through these periods and realize like you've been them. That's what I really like about the way we've organized this course. Actually, I'm really excited about the retrospective. Maybe it's also because there's a historian in me, but I love looking back. I think there's a perspective that can come from being able to look back and seeing the transformations that you've already gone through and seeing that, hey, survived that one and kind of drawing lessons out of that process. I think that also can really help you dampen a little bit the anxiety that can come, especially if you've got a lot of Aquarius planets or fixed sign planets in your chart. Okay, guys, anything else? I think that I've got all the questions. I did not read everything in the chat, but by all means, you can also email us if there's any questions. Is there a size limitation on the number of people taking a class? I don't think there's a limit, but usually our calls are, well, they vary quite wildly, honestly. But because, again, we have 2 time zones and we do always have students all over the world, the call sizes will vary anywhere between 20 and 50. That's kind of usually where we're at for the call sizes. And for the more experiential calls this time, we'll have breakout groups. So that's where we book you into like smaller groups so that everyone kind of has opportunity to do some processing. Do I do private readings? Yes, I do private readings as well. I have a private consultation practice. I'm at caroastrology.com. I will put it into the chat. And with that, I bid you all adieu. Thank you so much for joining me. It was lovely to meet you all.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I was putting it in.
Thank you, Caro.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. You.